Hey team, welcome back to my channel. This is Scott Johnson from Software Nuggets. This is the app we're going to write in this video. As you can see from the Solution Explorer, it's a quite small program. Notice that we have two WPF user controls, PickLanguage and UserInfo. I'm going to click these in a moment and you're going to see what those look like. And then we have two class objects. YTSubscriber is actually an abstract class. And then we have some styling up in App.xaml. Let's see how this works. Notice I will click on User Info and notice a form will come up, and this form is actually a WPF custom control. I will then type in some values. Fred Sanford, cell phone number, and then I hit the save. Now when I hit the save, it's going to raise an event, and if somebody's listening to me, that value is going to come over here. Watch. Perfect. So that is what this is all about, delegates and events. Now on our next example, favorites, notice that we have a list of languages. But see the save button? I have not subscribed to it. No subscribers, so notice nothing happens. Now, as you type in this source code, maybe you can finish up this save button. And that is this example, delegate example. Are you ready to learn, write, and debug delegates and events? Let's do it. There are 3 steps to learning delegates and events in C#. First, we must know how to declare a delegate and event. Secondly, we must know how to raise an event. And lastly, step 3, we must know how to subscribe to an event. In step 1, these come in pairs. You must declare both the delegate and the event. On line 35, we are raising the event, waiting for someone to subscribe. On line 39, I'm instantiating an object. On line 40, I'm subscribing to an event. So now you know about the 3 steps. Let's now implement what you just learned. We're going to write a C# WPF application that will implement delegates and events. Now below in the comment area, I have a table of contents so you can skip around. Open up Visual Studio's menu bar, File, New, Project. Look for the project template WPF application. Let's name the project WPF with delegates. Select .NET 6.0, press Create. Let's add 2 classes to the project. Our first class name is YTSubscriber.cs. Our second class name is Viewer.cs. Let's add 2 WPF user controls. Our first WPF user control, UserInfoCtrl. Our second control, PickLanguageCtrl. These are all the files we'll need for this project. Make sure that you have all of them. If you haven't, just go back to the previous step and watch me loading up each file again. Let's start coding. Let's begin with the C# objects. YTSubscriber of type abstract class. Don't even try instantiating an object of type YTSubscriber. You can only inherit an abstract class. Notice all our properties, aka fields, have question marks after the data type. That makes them nullable, not required. Lastly, a virtual keyword on the showUserInfo method allows me to override it when we're in the main class that inherits an abstract class. Make sure you get all this code, then press save. And here we're going to code up public class viewer. This is what our client will be able to instantiate to make an object. Just a moment ago, we were talking about YTSubscriber, and it's an abstract class. The only way I can use this is inherit. So I can come to this class object and say, hey, I want to inherit the properties and methods from this abstract class. Now this abstract class had a virtual method called showUserInfo. What that means is I can override that in viewers and maybe display something different. Notice I've used the override keyword string showUserInfo. Notice that it's the same name as this method. Now what I cannot do is I can't come over here and rename that, like put a 2 at the end. You'll notice in a second I'll get an underscore red and saying that's not right. You got to take that off. So this is our new method. So when someone instantiates an object of type viewer, they get a list of all these properties and they get this method. Inside of the file named App.xaml, this is the content. Notice it starts with application.resources, and then I have two styles. Here's my key name. That's how I'll reference it from my source code. And this is its target. Notice this one will target a label. This one will target a text box. Press pause now and get all that in. This here is a WPF custom control. We are now going to make this one, which is called user info, and favorites. Let's take a look at this WPF user control. Now its object name is UserInfoCtrl. Let's make sure that you have the same 8 lines inside of your program. Now our goal is to create 3 labels, 3 text boxes, and 2 buttons. As you can see, the XAML, we have our 3 labels, our 3 text boxes, and 2 buttons. Notice that the labels, the text box, and the buttons are grouped inside of a grid, and the grid has row definitions and column definitions. Let's begin with those. On our row definitions, notice we say 62, 52, 52, 18, 34, 2, and 60. Now you're probably wondering why I have these little rows in between. Well, what they allow me to do is do good spacing. Let's look at the XAML output one more time. Do you see the little lines in between each of our controls? Well, sometimes I have to make them a little bigger and put a new column in there, and instead of having to reformat my whole page, I just have to reformat something real small. So for years I have been doing this little 2 or 3 pixel gap. From line 10 to 22, make sure you have in all our row definitions. I do the same thing on column definitions. Notice that I have a 2 in between a 200 and a 500. You can see that this zone here's a 200. I have a small gap between those two, and then I have a 500. Type in the column definitions, but press pause now. From lines 29 to 39, just type in the labels. You see each of them have names and positions. Continue on line 42 to 50 with the text box controls, and notice their positions as well. At the bottom of our program, notice we have 2 buttons. They are in row 8. Notice 8 here, column 2 for both of them. But notice here on my margin, I move this control over from the left 358 pixels. And that is the XAML that makes up our first control. And here is the code for UserInfoControl. Notice our delegate and events. As you remember, when I begun this video, I was talking about pairs. Notice we have our delegate and we have our event. Notice save handler is used in the event save handler, and then this is our event name. Notice when we execute this delegate, I'll be passing in 3 parameters: first name, last name, and cell phone. Then I have another delegate pair, delegate event, on the cancel handler. That's when they click on the cancel button. So here you can see that when this form loads up, I'm going to pass in an object, YT subscriber, and I'm going to get the first name, last name, and cell phone. Now on the save click button, what's going to happen is when the user clicks on save, I'm going to see if somebody is subscribing to this event. And if they are subscribing, I'm going to raise that event and I'm going to pass in the text box's value for first name, last name, and cell phone. And you can see here on cancel, I'm doing the same thing. Did somebody subscribe to the cancel event? If they did, let's raise it. It's that easy. We're going to step through this code, and I'm going to put breakpoints on here just so you can see what happens in just a moment. This is what the PickLanguageCtrl will look like. It has a label, it has a list box, and then it has 2 buttons, save and cancel. Here is the XAML for that. Notice there's only 44 lines of code, so very simple. So make sure you get these first 8 lines. Notice the height is 450 and the design width 800. Then we have our row definition and column definition. Our row definition, 60, 350, and then we have a little gutter in between. Make sure you get all that typed in. And then our row definition, it's the standard 200, 2, and then 500. So make sure you get both of our row definition and our column definition. And then we have our first label. Notice it says the word language. The list box, notice that's on grid row 2, column 2. And then we have two buttons on row 6, column 2. And I'm using the same layout as we did in our previous user control. So that is all the XAML for the user control pick languages. Here is the source code for PickLanguageCtrl. We start off with our delegate event pairs, save handler. Notice the input parameter for save handler, it is a list of strings selected language. And then we have our next one, a delegate cancel handler. Notice it's a pair with the delegate and event. Then we have a list of languages. Notice we start from C programming down to SQL. Now in the constructor, notice that I'm initializing that, and then I'm going to take these languages and the list, I'm going to set the item source to this list of languages. Now let's just look at line 38 first. Cancel, here I say, on line 40 is asking, did someone subscribe to this event? And if that if evaluates to true, then we are going to invoke on PickLanguageCancel. We're going to raise that event. Notice it looks a little different than example 1. Now, just because we have a save handler and we have that delegate and event, that doesn't mean we have to use them. Notice in save click, it's empty. There are no, asking, is someone subscribing to this save click? No one's asking, and we're not going to raise it. Now this happens a lot. Imagine HTML, the text tag. There's an on blur. That doesn't mean you have to use it. It's available if you need it, but it's just there. That is the same case. Press pause a few times and make sure you get all the source code between lines 1 and 44. That finishes up the pick languages code behind. Here is the XAML for MainWindow. Make sure you get in all the code for the first 8 lines. There you can see the title, the min, max, width, and height values. Then you can see right away we're coming into a grid. And notice I'm going to be using those same positions for the width and height. And then of course you've already learned it twice before, but we have a column definition and row definition. You can see the widths 266, 2, and 1100. There's our 266 and there's our little gutter for 2 and then our 1100. And then our row definitions, we're still following that pattern of putting a small gap between our fields. So notice here I have a 97 and a 2, 570 and a 2, and then a 100. And that makes up our column definition and row definitions. Then we got a title bar, and notice it's at column 0 and a row span of 3. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put up there C# a dash delegates and events with abstract class. Well, you've seen that already, but you see how we start here in 0, 1 is actually this small field here, and then 2. So we have to span that over 3 fields. After we finish with the title bar, we're going to come down and make a grid. Now this grid is inside of the outer grid. And it begins in column 0, but row 2. Now notice we have a column for 266, and then we have our row definitions. Now you're probably wondering, where does this go? Well, this is our menu bar. Let's take a look at that. Do you see how the width is 266? And then we have a 60, a 2, a 60, and a 2, a 60, and a 2, and then a big 196 here. Those are what we're going to be using our menus. And notice inside of that menu, we're going to be putting buttons. Now at position row 2, I'm going to put user info. And on row 4, I'm going to put favorites. You can see how that looks here. Then underneath that, in the row definition where the height is 196, I'm going to put in a stack panel. Its orientation will be vertical. And notice I'm going to put a label in there called full name. So that last stack panel finishes up this inner green. Let's collapse that. Now we get to the most important control on the form, this stack panel called My Stack. This is where I'm going to dynamically add our user controls to this control. And notice that that is in row 2, column 2. It's got a height of 570 and a width of 1080. And guess what, team? That finishes the XAML for the main window. And here is the code for MainWindow.cs. Notice that we have a system and a system window. And then we have our UserInfoControl, our PickLanguageCtrl, and our viewer class. And then this is just given to us by the app. Now page 1 click is our first button. Notice user info, this button here is called page 1. This button here is called page 2. Not very good names, I agree with you. But on page 1 click, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clear that stack children. That is this whole area. Remember, my stack is a stack panel, and I'm going to remove all the contents from it. Now, when they clicked on that button called user info, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to instantiate an object called _UserInfoControl equals new UserInfoCtrl. So this makes a running copy of this class. This is called a WPF custom control. And then this viewer, I'm going to see if it's not null. I want to see if it has data or not. Now, if it's not null, that means it's been used, it's been populated. On that user control, there's a method in there called init component with data. I'm going to send it that user control. And it has some data in there, you know, like a first name, last name, and cell phone. Now, 25, you know what this means. This is my event, and this is, what is this called? So we have 3 things. You have your declaring, you have your raising, and then you have your subscribing. What would this be called? That's right, this is the subscribe. So for this event, this is the method that's subscribing to that. So if somebody hits the save button on this control, it's going to call this method. That method is right here. And notice I'm going to get first name, last name, and cell phone. Now, on that same control, if they press the cancel button, I'm going to call this method on user info cancel. That's right here. Now notice in both cases, that stack panel, I'm going to remove the control, kind of like free it up, and then I'm going to set that user control to null. Notice I do that in both of them. Now on button page 2, well, we know that's this second one, favorites. So what's going to happen is I'm going to instantiate a object. I'm then going to, what is this called? We have 3. What are they called? First one, declare. Second, the second one is raise, and the third one is subscribe. Very good. So here you can see that we are going to subscribe to the cancel on that PickLanguageCtrl. I don't have one for save. As like homework, I need you to program that one up. I need you to program like this one and see how you would do that. And then I'm going to add that control, that pick control, to my stack. So my stack.children add that control. Now when cancel is pressed, this method here gets hit. I'm going to remove it from stack panel and I'm going to free that memory. And guess what? That is the source code for this project. We are now going to step through this line by line and see how this works, and hopefully it answers all your questions about events and delegates. So here's our window. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to click on this button, and then notice that it is going to go on line 19. And then on 19, I'm going to clear the stack. Initially, there's nothing there, but you know, if we keep running this program, that would be important. On line 21, I'm instantiating a user info control. If viewer is not null, then I'm going to go to that control I just instantiated, and I'm going to send in viewer. It may have data on it. Notice here, these are my events. These are the delegates of that event. And if someone raises user info save, this is the method I'm going to use. I have a breakpoint. And if they try to do a cancel, I have a breakpoint. So let's use this and see what happens. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click on instantiate. What is my viewer? My viewer right now is null. I'm not going to do anything. Now I have, what are these called again? These are called events. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to subscribe here. So F10, F10. So if they want to do a save or a cancel, I have them covered. Now I'm going to add this user control to that stack panel. We can look at that stack panel and you can see that it's got children, and you can see the capacity is 1 right now and it's in there. And that is what we got. We have this UserInfoControl sitting inside of this stack panel. Now let's go back to our app. So now I'm going to type in some names, Fred, Sanford, telephone number, and then I'm going to hit the save button. Now hitting the save button is going to raise an event. Look at that. And now we're back to the main, we're inside of the user control, and I'm saying, hey, did someone subscribe? Yes. You see, if it was null, that would say no, no one subscribed. But this is not null. And now I'm going to come down here and I'm going to raise that event. I raised it. Look what popped. Now I'm inside of this code, F10. And then I'm going to come down there and get the first name, last name, and the cell phone number. And I'm going to put it into this viewer object. And then what is this right here going to do? I'm now going to remove that user info control from that stack. I'm going to free it. And then remember in that menu bar, I'm going to put the value. Here's the value. Now, if I click on user info again, I come in here, the first thing I see is like, is user info not null? So then I'm going to initialize that with, see, I came through here with values. So I get first name, last name, and cell phone. And notice when I come back in there and look at that form, I have those values. The values came from here to here. Now if I say, ooh, that's not 999, that is 9876, then hit save. Then notice I'm gonna, is anybody subscribing to me? Yes. Raise the event? Yes. Look what just fired. This fired said, hey, look, I'm supposed to handle your business. I'm going to go through there and update it. I'm going to remove it from the stack panel. I'm going to update my menu. I think you're getting it. Now on favorites, remember, save did not have an event. So I can press on that all day, but I can press cancel, and cancel will make that go away. And that there, my friends, is delegates and events. You'll have to practice this a few times and you will become the master. And that is it, my friends, delegates and events. This is a great skill to have, and practice makes the expert. I hope you were able to learn a few nuggets in this video and the skills to write that one homework assignment about that second custom control. If you have any questions about this video, please leave them below. Thank you for supporting my channel, and I'll see you back in my next video. Adios.